All right, folks, crypto market updates. I'm back from my trip, back in action, and we're going to start with the king of crypto, Bitcoin. So, as I mentioned last week, if you look at the market structure of Bitcoin, you'll find it quite interesting how it just tagged that prior resistance right on the nail. And we also talked about how it actually had a decent correction. It had a correction of 34%. So I think that's the type of correction I was looking for. Now we're in a bit of a consolidation pattern. Like I said before, nothing has actually changed in relation to this, right? You can kind of see this confluence between horizontal and diagonal support, which is interesting. Really nice market structure on this. The bull trend's still intact. Yeah, we had a 34, 35% correction. Some people might be, shedding tears over that. But, if anybody's shedding tears over a 34% correction on Bitcoin after the absurd gains we made in a very short period of time, then I would dare say that that's really absurd, right? I mean, what are people expecting, right? I personally like this. I like the fact that we corrected. I like the fact that it's chopping around and consolidating. And like I said, if Bitcoin ends up consolidating within a specific range and it takes its time chopping around, it's going to allow altcoins some breathing room. What does that look like? Well, they start to pop a bit of green. So one thing that I've noticed yesterday, so Bitcoin had a little bit of a dip yesterday. And during that dip, so it was in the nines right here. Top 100 coins, how many of these coins, excluding stable coins like Tether, how many of them are showing some green? When Bitcoin dropped the 4%, was -4 in the red. How many showed some green? I counted about 34 coins out of the top 100 had some green. So basically, Bitcoin had dropped, and some coins kind of bucked the correlation and showed a little bit of green. Some of them were, five, nothing like major. Some of them were about 5% green. Others were just like 1 or 2% green. But it shows that that there's some decorrelation happening, right? A bit of decoupling happening. It's kind of what we need, right? Obviously, one thing we've noticed is that when Bitcoin is on a very strong, aggressive bull trend, altcoins tend to stay stable dollar-wise, and they bleed out on the BTC charts. When Bitcoin is really bearish and it bleeds out hard, it starts dumping, it's in a bear trend, we notice that altcoins dump in both BTC and the USD charts. We've noticed that when Bitcoin, after a long bleed out, when Bitcoin makes a gain, altcoins gain higher. So we talked about how, from here till about here, when Bitcoin made 154% gains, there are altcoins that were up 300+% gains. So that was probably, one could say, category 2 alt season from about here to here. Right then, Bitcoin had to make the final push up, and then altcoins start to bleed out on the BTC chart. So pretty much for the final push up here, altcoins were bleeding on the BTC charts as Bitcoin was playing catch up, the seesaw effect. Now Bitcoin's consolidating, had its correction, a bit of a shakeout on alts, lots of red on alts. Now it's consolidating. It's that period of consolidation after Bitcoin's made its run up, it made its three drives up, consolidates on a confirmed bull trend. That's where altcoins can have some breathing room, some space to perhaps push up for another leg, right? Maybe we see some breakouts. We see some gains on the BTC charts. So we're kind of on the cusp, right? We're on the cusp. Obviously, if Bitcoin were to, let's say, snap support right here, and if we had a big shakeout, another dump into lower levels, then, we might see some red. We might see a sea of red. But if support can hold up and Bitcoin just kind of consolidates into a bit of a triangle pattern, it consolidates over the next few months, then that could be, you know, maybe even into the fall, right into the September. Technically, we could form a symmetrical triangle right up until September, mid-September, right? If that were to happen for Bitcoin, I believe that would give enough breathing room for altcoins to push up, right? We've already seen, we've talked about this before, we've seen a major cleanse in altcoins. We've seen a lot of ICOs die and go bust. We've seen a mass cleanse of microcap and small cap coins just get completely wiped off the face of the map, getting delisted from exchanges. This is good. Survival of the fittest. There's too much garbage, right? We need to clean up some of the chaff, right? Survival of the fittest. I'm okay with that. In fact, I'd like to even, there's some of the large cap coins that I personally believe don't even belong in the top 10 that I'd like to see wiped off as well, but that's another story. Markets don't care what I think, right? Some of these larger projects have large whales and backers, and they've been putting everything they can to kind of hold things up. So it is what it is. It is what it is. But in my opinion right now, I think there's a chance we could see some action in altcoins. So this is what I would like to see. In my opinion, this type of scenario would be the most bullish type scenario, would be the healthiest for the bull trend. In fact, eventually this would probably transform into an ascending triangle, right? Now, let's look at the downside. Well, the downside is if we make another leg down into the 8s, technically we could drop as low as, you know, 41 to 42% and still be in a bull trend, right? We could drop all the way down to the low 8s, and that's still a possibility on the table. Maybe there's a final shakeout and still be bullish. The market structure can still remain bullish. I think I've showed this example before, but on the first parabolic breakout right here, this was the deepest correction we had on the entire bull trend. And I would dare say that the current market structure right now actually looks a lot healthier. Like the correction hasn't been as drastic, right? The wick, look how deep this wick is. I mean, just the wick alone, the selling pressure on the wick alone was 19%. Just on that wick. That's how parabolic it went. You know, in this wick, that wasn't 19%. It's a little bit more modest, 6%. It's because the market's more liquid. There's actually more liquidity on the order books. There's more market participants. There's higher volume. It's all that kind of stuff, right? Maybe not higher volume. This is higher volume on the higher BTC volume, right? Obviously, this is showing higher BTC volume, but higher volume as far as dollars are concerned, because the higher Bitcoin price, so on and so forth, right? So bull trend's still intact. Doesn't mean we can't dip lower. I still have some orders set at 85. Maybe I'm just being greedy. I know Chris started scaling in. He set a trailer. He started scaling in. So you get two perspectives. We're both kind of looking and leaning towards the same thing. Just because I stacked some orders, like I stacked those orders actually before I went on my trip 3 weeks ago. We were at $1,300 when I stacked those orders, just to kind of, or we were up higher anyways, just to give you an example. Let me tell you where we were at. This is before my trip. Maybe we weren't up there. 1, 2, 3. Anyways, perhaps not, but that's just a general area. Where I took profit was around just under 1,300 is where I took some profit. I bought a little bit of Dogecoin, probably, what's the percentage? Maybe about 15% of what I took profit on into some Doge, just because I went into my low Satoshi zone. I'm just gonna take a peek at that. I'm kind of playing a little bit of catch up myself as far as what the markets are doing. Let's see what Doge is doing right now. I think it's just kind of been shopping around, nothing terribly eventful. Still kind of at the same zone where I bought. It's not a heck of a lot for me to do. in relation to that. If we can, we're starting to chop and create a bit of sideways here on this. What that could look like is something like this. Create a sideways range close to the bottom. So, or it could bleed out a little bit more. Really, as far as Doge is concerned, there's absolutely nothing for me to do right now in Doge, because the only time I'm going to do something in relation to Doge is if it comes up and hits my sell orders. I think I have one at around 96 Satoshis, or if it drops lower and I average down and buy more, larger position size, and then go into full position size. Other than that, it's nothing for me to do. It's a bit of a win-win, right? It's a win-win. If it goes higher, great, I'm in profit. Nothing to complain about. If it goes lower, I get a bigger position size. I actually go into a full size. So those are the kind of trade setups I like. I generally lean towards buying low when I'm going for the win-win scenarios. If you're going to do a breakout, all-time high breakout, or other types of breakouts, then you're going to treat that differently, right? Probably with a hard stop, so on and so forth. Everyone knows the drill. So let's just take a, would you risk 100% of position size or set a stop? I would. I'd risk it on Doge. I'd average down and just hold it. That's just me. That doesn't mean that that's the wisest approach. That doesn't mean that's what's good for everyone. That's just how I've traded Doge in the past and what's worked for me. It doesn't mean it's going to keep working, but how I would manage risk is that 100% position size is still within a limit, right? It's still within a limit. So it's like, what's the max risk I want to put into this type of thing? What's the max risk? And so to get to that point, you have to kind of determine what's a decent amount of money that's certainly going to make things interesting if it pops a triple or quadruple. But if it completely falls to crap, is not going to break the bank. It's not going to, you're not going to be wiped out. What can you risk? What's the percentage of that one can risk, right? And that's really up to the individual to determine what their risk tolerance is, what their portfolio size is, where they're at, so on and so forth, right? I don't take trade setups very often these days. So usually when I do, I like to press the gas a little bit. I can afford to take a little bit more risk these days. Trade less and then take a little bit more risk when I do take a trade type of thing. And that's just me. So that's Doge, right? The thing is, the ultimate question is, will this time be different? Will Doge just die? Actually, I'm curious to see what the volume is now that's on Binance. Binance, 500,000. It's not huge volume. They don't have those Dogecoin, certainly not paying for wash trade, market making, or whatnot. Even though there might still be a bit happening on Bitforex here. So let's look at some other markets. Look at Tezos. I personally kind of see Tezos as a bit of a sleeping giant. I did notice a little uptick in volume lately. By a few mil today. Was that 9 mil this morning? Kind of see that produce kind of almost like a double bottom, the higher low. On the BTC charts. Little increase in volume here. If we can see a break of this, and we got to pop up. If we get a pop on the BTC charts, that'll probably correspond, as long as the Bitcoin price stays relatively stable, that'll probably correspond with the retest of the all-time high or break of the all-time high if we pop up. You know, dollar wise, it's kind of been respecting market structure. You can see a lot of support in through here. It broke. It's a bit of a descending triangle. So obviously if it breaks down, it could end up doing a full retrace. So that's certainly not off the table per se, but a descending triangle, even though it could have a bearish bias, it is testing the descending line. And if it breaks this line, then it pretty much invalidates the triangle. So we're kind of on the cusp. So the best thing that could happen for this is just to snap up through that line, even if it were to tag horizontal resistance in through here. That would invalidate that immediate descending triangle. And we're very close to doing that right now. So we'll see how that plays out. For the most part, aside from the immediate price action of Tezos, the project is growing nicely. There's still lots of development. When I start seeing financial institutions like, you know, the third largest investment bank of Brazil or whatnot, signaling that they want to offer security tokens or tokenized real estate or whatever it is on Tezos, it tells me that there's potential and room for momentum. There's a possibility for a chain reaction, a chain effect, right? Tezos has a couple of things that fundamentally, and obviously, like, this is just kind of, this isn't new information for anybody who's been around here for a while, but this is all just my perception, of course. But there's two things that are extremely appealing on a fundamental note with the technology. One is obviously formal verification of smart contracts. Yeah, people offering security tokens and stuff, and they're tokenizing $1 billion+ dollars. You want to make sure that the code is without glitches. You want to make sure it's not going to do some funky stuff like what we've seen with Ethereum before, right? To me, that's a huge value proposition, right? Ethereum messed that up royally multiple times over. Anybody who's been in crypto since 2015, 2016 knows how many glitches and bugs that it's had. It's still done well in spite of all of that. You know, it's still a top tier 1 market, $7 billion in volume, large market cap, so on and so forth, right? So if a market can grow that large in spite of all the glitches and bugs and in spite of all the glaring conflicts of interest around the governance and so on and so forth. And then the second thing is that corporations, financial institutions and stuff are used to being able to buy shares and having voting rights over stuff, right? Over their investments. They are used to having influence over the direction of their investments. And so for that reason, we've already seen that being signaled through Coinbase custody and so on and so forth. This has been expressed a few times already that those bigger players are interested in being able to have some type of influence over the investment. Think about it this way. You're a large investment bank, you're a large corporation, something like that. You drop $100 million into some tokens. Do you really want the fate of your investment in the hands of a couple of, you know, just a room full of crypto nerds to decide the fate for you, where you have zero influence or say whatsoever? Or do you want some kind of formal governance process that you can participate in based on your share of the network? Which one makes more logical sense as far as, like, anyways, I'm bullish on a fundamental note. I think it's a slow cooker. It's going to take its time. The markets are stupid. A lot of market participants are dumb as a doorknob, right? And as new money comes in, we're just going to see the new capital, the new liquidity getting dumber and dumber. I saw something today on Twitter where someone was calling for $10,000 XRP, right? I mean, I'm going to go off on a tangent here. Hopefully no one here believes that XRP is going to go to $10,000, but like, literally, how stupid do you have to be to think that Ripple is going to go to $10,000, right? Like, you really have to be dumb as nails to believe that, right? Because if that were the case, its market cap would swallow up the entire global economy. Everything. All the money in the world, it gets swallowed up into Ripple. It would have a market cap larger than everything. Look at the supply, folks. 42 billion times that by $10,000. I mean, anyways, I don't want to go off on the rails here, but I've seen some pretty stupid stuff out there. And I mean, in some ways that's kind of bullish. But in other ways, it shows how inefficient, stupid these markets are. It shows that, you know, there's the thing with like the stock market. When you think about the stock market, and you think about, you know, you look at when Travis is doing his analysis and finding undervalued stocks, it's anchored to real world activity, right? You can have overvaluations in the stock market, of course. You know, you have, you know, price to revenue ratios. Sometimes it could be 100x, so on and so forth, based on like future speculation, what investors think the returns could be in. And you can certainly get market shakeouts, and you can get a lot of dumb moves and hot air in the stock market based on market sentiment. You know, if people are overreacting to a bullish or bearish news piece, that certainly happens, right? And then you can get penny stocks with a lot of pump and dumps and sketchy stuff like that. It certainly happens, but for the most part, you have it anchored to reality. The reality is the fundamentals based on, you know, are they generating any revenue? How much debt do they have? How's the company being managed? All these real world activities that eventually, if the markets are inefficient, it has to come back to reality. But in crypto, you don't really have that. The fundamentals are more around the technology. But most of the time, it's just technical analysis and hot air, market sentiment, just pure hype, where you can have absolute, complete degenerate shitcoins that are multi-billion-dollar market cap, that are purely based on garbage, based on nothing. Complete scams can be multi-billion-dollar market cap. I mean, you remember BitConnect, right? You remember how many people were in BitConnect? BitConnect was at one point probably in the top 25 in market cap. It was listed on CoinMarketCap. God knows why they listed it on CoinMarketCap, considering it was an overt Ponzi. Wasn't true crypto. You couldn't even actually withdraw it or whatnot. But, you know, that's just an example, right? So obviously with crypto, TAA technicals are number one. Price charts, price action is number one because of that hot air. Fundamentals come after that. But if you want to talk about survivability, you know, what's going to be around in 5 years? What's going to be around in a decade? What's going to stick around for the next market cycle? Well, then you have to kind of dive into fundamentals, or fundamentals can show you, okay, what would institutional players be more interested in, and so on and so forth, right? A lot of fundamentals around technology, but you know, if you look at a lot of the tech and some of the top coins, a lot of these are copy and paste, right? A lot of these are just pure copy and paste, offer nothing innovative. I mean, Stellar is just a copy and paste of Ripple, okay? I mean, Litecoin is a clone coin. It doesn't really offer anything new in the way of innovation, but it's a fair launch coin that's liquid and all that stuff. So it stays in the top 4, and that's fine. You know, I consider Litecoin like pocket change, right? Use Bitcoins like big bills. You know, you wanna crack $1,000 bill on something, break out the Bitcoin. You want some pocket change. You want to be able to spend things and not get taxed if you're not invested in it, so on and so forth. You know, it has their use case. Ethereum, I think is solid. It did offer a lot in the way of innovation and stuff. It had its problems and growing pains as any new market. I think it deserves being in the top 5 for sure. You know, Bcash is just a fork. It's a clone coin. You know, just because you give it bigger blocks doesn't mean it's special. Like, who cares, right? And then BSV, BS, it's just a clone of that. In fact, it's already being hard forked multiple times by accident. Anyways, everyone knows my opinion. EOS is just like it's just like some of the code was copy and pasted from BitShares, right? Tron is like a clone of EOS. Cardano doesn't even have a bloody working product. Tezos is light years ahead of Cardano right now. They didn't even launch their bloody product yet. yet it's a higher market cap with more volume, right? So you can see there's a lot of hot air. Monero's cool. Monero's, you know, it's got interesting stuff happening, good privacy coin. It's being used. This, I could see some merit to this. Bitfinex is obviously a very profitable exchange. So this is almost be similar to an STO through the burn rate, not a traditional sense, like you're getting traditional equity and voting rights. But if they say what they're going to do and they buy up supply and burn and stuff, that's certainly an interesting value proposition. I think it almost has more value because it's linked to an actual corporation that's generating profit. I think it's got a better value proposition than a lot of the other coins in the top markets, so on and so forth, right? So you can see there's a lot of hot air in the top 15 markets, right? Top 15. And then there's a lot of copy and paste and whatever garbage, right? So fundamentals alone aren't necessarily going to make you money per se. Let's see what's gaining. Let's just take a look at the top gainers here. Now, it's one thing to have things gaining, but it's another thing to have things gaining on volume. So this has decent volume. Acro. Let's see what Acro is. Actually, let me see where this volume is on. Okay. So pretty much 100% of this volume is on one exchange. All right. Okay, so it's a newly listed coin. Obviously, they must have some type of affiliation with that exchange. Maybe that exchange is using some market making algos or whatnot. Personally, I wouldn't be trying to take a stab at something that's just freshly listed. I mean, maybe you can play with the intraday range or whatnot, but you know, it's usually, I personally prefer to let the markets simmer. So that's on one exchange. Obviously, that's a single point of failure until it gets listed on multiple exchanges. The reason why it's a single point of failure is if it gets delisted off that exchange, you can kiss that market goodbye. So probably a good market to trade. Not necessarily sure if it'd be a good one to invest in. I don't know anything about this project. It's not showing anything in relation to market cap. Apparently, they don't know what the circulating supply market cap is at the moment. So that would require more investigation from a fundamental perspective, which is fine. This one, QW, oh no, not that one. ORS, it's got decent volume. Let's see. Where is this trading? Where is Origin Sport? Again, it's only trading on one exchange, single point of failure. I bet you it's a newly listed market. Nope, it's been around since 2015. It's been around since 2015, but it's only on one exchange, single point of failure. We've seen what happens to coins when they get delisted. Oh, actually, is it actually on Bitfinex as well? Let me see this. Unless that's a different ticker, 301. And you can only trade this against OKCoin bucks or what? That's what it's showing here. Anyways, whatever. What else is there in the top? Anything else? So those two don't interest me that much. Let's see what else. I'm just like, this is my thought process, you know, thinking out loud. If I was looking at this by myself, these are the thoughts that would go through my head. OGO. Where is this trading at? Okay, it's got a little bit more diversity as far as exchanges are concerned. 6 mil, 30% gains. OGO. Utrex. Okay, so this looks a little bit more interesting than the other ones. Okay, so out of those three, this one would seem the most interesting to me. Had a massive sell-off. Actually, recently it had a massive gain and sell-off. Wow, an 83% sell-off over the course of just in the past few weeks. That's quite drastic. Actually, up here on dollar charts, it's even higher. 90% sell-off over the course of a few weeks. Gains. How much did you gain over the course of a few weeks? 1,600% gains over the course of a few weeks. This is certainly interesting. Seems like there's a little bit of pumping or something happening on this. It's kind of testing a little bit of resistance. You see support, resistance. If it breaks out, maybe it starts ramping up. I have no idea what this is, but you know, it's been making gains today. So this could be something interesting to watch. So my thought process, this is a thought process I go through. And then after all of that, if it's like, okay, check mark, check mark, check mark, it looks interesting. What I don't like about this is the total supply and the circulating supply. There's something funky happening there. So I need to look at, you know, the supply creation, the rate of inflation on the supply. If the total supply says, hey, you know, it's 1 billion OGO, but it's a slowly trickled inflation rate, kind of like Bitcoin's 21 million coins proof of work or whatever, then okay, that's manageable. What's the rate of inflation, so on and so forth. But if it's like, okay, here's 1 billion in supply and we did an ICO and we're only going to sell 1/3 of that and keep the rest because we're greedy degenerates that raised money and we'll keep, you know, 2/3 of the supply for ourselves, well, then obviously that's something to take in account, right? So the next step would be, what the heck is this, right? Terms and conditions, not located in China, not located in the States, not located on planet Earth. I don't breathe oxygen, all right? Let's see, privacy preserving platform for decentralized applications. Never seen that before. Privacy is dying online. Origo is the cure. And then you could, if you want to do a deep dive, you can jump into the white paper. Let's see what the white paper says. White paper says, give me all your money. We'll sell you some crappy token. You know, anyways, you get the point. Then you can dive into like, what the heck is this, right? So then you look at it, you dive into it, and then you say, okay, well, what are other people saying about this, right? What's going on? So on and so forth. You could also, one thing I like to do is if I were to do something like this and look at it, Bitcoin talk, see if they have an announcement thread. Actually, they would usually message board. That would probably be right there. Okay. Origo Network. So they didn't link it on CoinMarketCap. Let's see. So then if you want to, I'm not the dev of this project. I'm trying to bring this ICO here so people can update the project. Okay, so we know it's an ICO. So on and so forth. And then you can, one thing that I like to do if I want to do like a deeper dive in researching is I'll actually go through the forum and I'll read people's comments. And what's interesting about that is, you know, there will be some people who will actually do a deep dive and they might say, hey, you know, this developer is a scammer. This is their 3rd project that they raised an ICO for and he scammed people. Don't trust this person. You know, they would say that in the comments. Or someone say, oh, this is just a copy and paste of the code for shitcoin A, right? And then you say, okay, that's something to take a note. And then you have some people where their comments will be completely irrelevant. And they'll just say, why coin price go down when Lambo? Developer no give me money, you know? And then you're like, okay, those are just those, you kind of ignore those comments, right? That's just, obviously those aren't providing a lot of value, right? And then you have like price speculation and whatever, right? So anytime, or sometimes someone could say, oh, this troll's just trolling, you know, that what they're saying is not accurate, and then they give a counterpoint, and then you can kind of look at that, right? So that's like a quick way of being able to take in a bunch of information and leverage perhaps some other research how people do and so on and so forth. Because, you know, when you have hundreds of coins or whatnot, you might need to speed up the process. Obviously, you probably don't want to, unless you have a ton of time on your hands, you're probably not going to go through every single white paper and check out all the code. If you're a developer, you can go look at GitHub. You could go look at how many commits it's made, and if there's anything unique to the source code and stuff, then you could do an even deeper forensic analysis of the project if you have those skills and knowledge, right? So you can take that as deep as you want. So I'm just using this as a random example of my thought process if I were going through a new market, right? And I mean, you could dive right down the rabbit hole, and you could literally spend the rest of your life just researching shitcoins. It really depends how far you want to take it. You'll mostly get the most bang for your buck doing this if you're hunting for small caps. But I'll tell you, the game of small caps is not the same as it used to be. You're not getting as much mileage on small caps as it used to be, and we saw a mass exodus, a mass wiping off the map of many small caps. So I've even seen a lot of hardcore small cap investors who are really hardcore about it capitulate on small caps, small market cap coins, right? Higher risk. Tom's saying, I stopped doing research and people will buy anything anyways. That's true. You know, sometimes as a trader, you just look at volume and technicals. And you're like, I don't know what this stupid ticker does, but whatever. And I know what it does. It's a killer app, amazing feature. It multiplies your Bitcoin. You put 1 Bitcoin in, you get 3 back. You put 2 in, you get 20 back, whatever, right? That's a killer app. There's a killer feature right there, right? So at the end of the day, because here's the thing, even with the fundamentals. So the fundamentals could probably help with the longevity of the survivability of the project, but you could have complete scam coins that have a bunch of whale pumpers backing it, people with deep pockets, and they could pump their stupid scam coin any day of the week, right? So it doesn't, just because a coin's really sketchy doesn't necessarily mean that it can't move up, right? And so sometimes as traders, we take that into account and just trade the tickers. And I found that's been the easiest way, just looking at market structure and price. And obviously this was a big gainer recently as of 2009, even though it's like a newish market, right? God knows what it does. Anyways, there's just an example. Random stuff, but we're seeing some green. Let's just look at the BTC charts. How many are green? Okay, so on the BTC charts, Bitcoin made a move up. Out of all of these, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 20, 21, 22, 23, 27, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 37%. The top 100 coins have turned green on this move up on Bitcoin. Something to make note of. Get some tickers. I'm going to look at the Q&A. Can I look at ZRX? I sure can. Let's look at ZRX. I haven't looked at that in a while. All right, let's just clear out some of this. I'm gonna look at Poloniex. So it's like one of those full retrace coins, right? You can see that it's just been on the BTC charts, it's been making lower highs, lower highs, lower highs, lower highs. But it's coming to a very, very interesting point because it's done a full retrace. It's pretty much given back 100% of the move on the BTC charts. Might even have to go a little bit lower. Maybe it tags for a double bottom. Let's see. I guess you can kind of say it might be a little bit of a descending wedge, right? So how do we trade descending wedges? Well, there's obviously three possibilities here. You know, the bear side is it just continues on with the slow bleed, but you know how the range is getting tighter on this wedge? So we have peak volatility, tighter range on the slow bleed. This is a slow grind phase, right? In order for this to be more of a confirmed reversal, we need to see it breaking the immediate wedge, the descending lower highs. We need to see a break above that, maybe with some volume. So this is what that would look like, right? So that's one way it could break it, right? Especially if it could take out some immediate horizontal resistance, and then, you know, descending diagonal resistance. So that's basically how you would trade a descending wedge. You try to get in on the early breakout, the BTC charts. The second way it could break this is if it starts just flatlining and going sideways, creating kind of like this sideways accumulation pattern at support. And then obviously the bear scenario is it makes new lows on the BTC charts and that support doesn't hold up and it completely flops. So two ways to trade this if one is interested in ZRX. If one is a ZRX maximalist with ZRX tattooed under your left eye. One way is you can just wait for the breakout. If you did that, you'd be buying, it'd be probably at least 40% higher than where it is now. So, and then it could just be a fake out. Another way is if you scale in at support and you're like, okay, I'm not going to wait. I want to be aggressive. I want to see if I can squeeze a little bit more percentage. At which point you got to have a cutoff point. Where should the market not go where you decide I want out of this? Well, here's the thing. You could buy right now, but in order for it to tag a double bottom on the nose, that would be another 40. It doesn't look like much, but that would be a 40% drop. Tag a double bottom there, right? Maybe one sets an even tighter stop. Maybe one buys now, like a little hybrid approach where you just set it for the prior low. You say, okay, well, if it snaps, or maybe even if it snaps below this line here. So you say, okay, well, if it takes out and goes lower than that prior low, which is like 15% away, then perhaps you just kind of cut it, right? That's one way to do it as well. Or you do a partial size and you say, okay, this is a partial size. I'm interested in this. However, if it comes all the way back down to test this low on the double bottom, then I'll size in on a full size. At which point, if it were to break that, then that would be one stop and say, okay, well, I'm going to cut out of this market if that support snaps, because then it's just uncharted territory to the downside and it could be a slow bleed into oblivion, right? Let's say you bought some here, and then it ramps up and doesn't go lower, and you don't get a full fill, like a full-size fill, and then it breaks out here. One could always possibly add to the position and then get an average fill that's lower than the breakout point. It's another way of looking at it. There's a lot of different ways to cut the cake on this. So, but I would say this is certainly at a very interesting price area because it's closer to the support. So for my personal taste and style of investing trading, that would be appealing to me, right? So I'm concerned about my Zcash bag. It's way underwater into BTC. It's at record lows versus BTC, and I bought most of my Zcash much higher. I read somewhere that one of the big Wall Street investment banks had a stake in Zcash, but this seems to have no positive effect on the price action. I'd like to hear something encouraging from you about its future price action. I'd hate to capitulate at these rock bottom prices. That's an interesting. I think anyone who bought Zcash at any point is probably at a similar boat. This is one of Zcash's features, is breaking new lows on the BTC charts and just kind of incessantly bleeding out. My hypothesis is it's basically the founder rewards, that 20% founder rewards. It's a lot of extra selling pressure, especially if people are having to pay tax on that, then suddenly they're having to liquidate it. So you take 20% of all of the Zcash that's mined, and it goes into the pockets of founders and early investors and so on and so forth, and perhaps some developers. And, you know, suddenly it's just like, it's free money for them, right? When you get free money, you can sell at any point and you're still making money. Versus someone who has to mine and actually run get some hardware equipment, pay for electricity, run it as a business, so on and so forth. It's not just free money to them. They had to actually put something in it to get it, right? So Zcash kind of reminds me a lot of Litecoin in 2014, 2015. It just bleeds out. And then they're talking about possibly forking it. So we know the Ycash fork had like zero effect on this whatsoever. Zcash is my worst bag as well. So you're not alone in that. It's definitely my worst bag. So I think fundamentally the technology and the project is interesting. You can kind of see it's in a bear channel right now on the BTC charts. Slow grind bear channel, right? Doesn't have all that peak volatility. Just been bleeding out. So how does one trade that? You know, if we break out of the channel, then suddenly it could have a reversal. If one were to capitulate on Zcash, knowing that it could be close to the bottom, strategically that could be used as a tax harvest, where you realize a loss in the books and then you immediately toss it into another project to recapture and regain some of that loss based off of correlation. I've talked about that many times. Right, I haven't really done that with Zcash just because I've liked the project. I did that with previous bags before if I had something that was underwater. A lot of people in crypto tend to think that's a good idea to just bag hold things and pray and hope, but you know, strategically it's better if you're having to pay taxes and such. If you're in a tax-free jurisdiction, then obviously this isn't applicable. But it's way more strategic to realize the loss in the books and flip into something else. That said, what do you flip into? Right? I think the zero proofs technology is very interesting tech for Zcash, which is one of the whole reasons why I got into it. But obviously the founder reward element is probably somewhat responsible for a lot of this selling pressure. Interesting news is that those zero proofs, Z-Snarks will likely get implemented into Tezos, because I know that's been on the table. So suddenly, sometime this year, Tezos could actually literally turn into a privacy coin as well as all the other features. So one thing I love about it is it could just absorb and amalgamate all the best features from every other blockchain, just assimilate it like some Borg. Anyways, still very early. So when we see it starting to assimilate really interesting features like this, then suddenly we'll probably see a lot more attention and energy going into it. But all right, so Zcash, I'm still holding mine. I can't quite tell anybody what to do for theirs. I'm still holding mine, mostly for a loss of, what would I shovel that money into as far as, what projects do I actually think are interesting. That's not just some kind of IOU ERC20 token, some hot air vaporware, right? I mean, like I said before, this one kind of interests me. Eunice said, Leo, but it comes with its own risks. Yeah, Chainlink's cool. The thing with Chainlink is it's already made substantial gains, right? That's the problem. Like on a fundamental note, I think it's pretty cool. But if I apply my buy low, sell high to sell Zcash at its bottom just to shovel money into something that's already up, 1,500%, regardless of how, sexy the fundamentals might be on this project, pretty much just violates all my personal trading rules. So it's not my style. I personally wouldn't sell Zcash at the bottom to chase something that's already pumped like that myself. That's just me. Doesn't mean that maybe Link will still outperform it. Maybe Link will make another move up, so on and so forth. We don't know. So to try to play the edge, to have an edge, I try to buy low and then sell high. So usually I would be doing the opposite. If I had Chainlink and I sold that, I'd probably shovel it into some Zcash if it were lower, right? Lower end of the spectrum. Because this decided that I wanted to have a full retrace, and suddenly you could lose an extra 65% on top of bags that are already down, right? So a bad situation can certainly turn worse. Since we're all right here on Link, you can see that's had a 0.618% retrace, which is certainly an interesting dip buy zone, right? An interesting zone. Probably wouldn't be, just like as a trade in and of itself, that probably wouldn't be a terrible area to take a stab at. And then obviously if it could break this immediate line, and perhaps it pops up some momentum, and then let's see if it creates like a larger consolidation pattern. That would be the most bullish case scenario as far as Chainlink. Other projects that interest me on a fundamental note is Cosmos, but it's considerably higher. Kaz, my co-pilot, saying maybe you could flip Zcash into ZRX. That's certainly a possibility. That's certainly a possibility. But we'll see what happens in 2020 around the Zcash halving that's coming up. The one thing I don't like about that is, Zuko's kind of hinting at re-implementing some kind of founder award or whatever, forking to re-implement something. And I'm just like, listen, if you create a social contract and you say you're going to do a founder award in the first 4 years, then deal with it. When it's over, it's over. Deal with it, cupcake. Like don't don't change your social contract on people. Oh, we need funding, blah, blah. Too bad, right? Where's the founder awards for Bitcoin? There are none. 10 years later, Bitcoin's still doing fine. right? There's a greed element too to all of this, but so be it. It's the nature of the beast, I guess. Yeah, I like Cosmos, but it's still probably like 30x above the ICO price. So that's my thoughts on Zcash. I'm not planning on selling any just yet. So we'll see. But yeah, that's definitely my worst bag as well. Got Zcashed. Depending on how much Zcash you're holding, you could put into Doge. Yeah, there's definitely options on that. Certainly options and possibilities. Maybe there's a middle path there, right? Any thoughts on Zcash YC fork? Did you participate in the one-to-one? I didn't. Where's Ycash? Let's see. Is there a market that Ycash is traded on? Anybody know? Is there a price to Ycash? I'm definitely not going to, spend my time. It's on CoinGecko. Okay. Let's look at this. Ycash price. Let's take a look at this. All right, Ycash. We're trading at $3.19. 87, a whopping 87,000 in trading volume. Exchanges. Ooh, it's on big one. Whew. That's some serious business right there. Let's see. It's volume. It's pushing 29K on big one. Jeez. Safe trade. Hold me back. Anyways, that doesn't mean it's not going to turn into anything. Could turn into something just because it's not listed on any major exchanges. Could be an opportunity possibly to, snag some up before it gets listed on bigger exchanges. So that's a strategy. If you think that it's going to turn into something big, it's going to get more liquidity. So I would imagine this is a small market cap. So let's just look back and see the market cap. Market cap's 22 mil. So if you think it's going to grow in market cap and get listed on some other exchanges, usually when it gets listed on major exchanges, it'll have a pump leading up to it. So that could be an opportunity to scoop some up. However, for me to go through the process of claiming this, so we're looking at Zcash, $70. Let me just look at this here. And that is $3.19. Okay, so that's about a 4.5% return. It's not very liquid, so you might not have liquidity to sell them immediately, but that's an immediate 4.5% return. So it's almost like, I guess one could consider that airdrop a bit of a dividend type payment, if we were to make an analogy. But I personally am not going to be redeeming my Ycash, because in order for me to do that, it requires me to literally empty out my hardware wallet of the other coins that are sharing the same private keys as Zcash, and then to use those private keys, that seed, to get my hard fork, because you'd want to empty it. You don't want to give away your private keys with a wallet full of stuff. So that's a big process. I got to reset up all the wallet, blah, blah. For me, it's not worth it. Especially considering that I would only do that if I needed to sell it. If I was just going to hold it, well, technically I still have it right now, right? But I don't know. There's tons of forks happen all the time, and can't necessarily catch them all. But if this got listed on a major exchange, and suddenly the price, 10x or whatever, then suddenly that becomes worth it. Maybe it's worth at that point going through the whole process and emptying out the wallets and the private keys and all that stuff to redeem it. So right now, it's just not worth the time for me to do that because there's probably not enough liquidity to even get $3 per coin anyways. I doubt these coins have very thick order books regardless, especially with this really small volume that's being pushed. So I'm not in a rush. If it turns into something great, then one could always redeem it. And apparently Ycash has a fund reward of only 5%. Will continue to implement all the future improvements of Zcash. Okay, so what's its value proposition though? What is the point of Ycash? Anybody know? I haven't looked into it, but what is its point? It's just like a vanilla fork of Zcash, just a clone coin. Is it like the Bcash to Bitcoin? To correct a founder reward controversy. See, to me, that's not a good enough value proposition because they don't have enough network effect. It wouldn't surprise me if this just kind of fizzled into oblivion. Like Tezos had a fork in its earlier days because of the KYC issue. So someone forked it to create the non-KYC version of Tezos, and it's kind of a non-thing right now. It's a non-event. Right? I don't even think it's listed on CoinMarketCap. So we'll see. So this just seems like a clone coin. I don't know what the longevity is. However, Ycash is a preemptive move to resist future community decisions that make sense Zcash's system of developer funding known as Beyond a Promise 10% cap of total from CoinDesk. Okay, so that's certainly a noble cause, and it can perhaps pick up some momentum if there's enough disgruntled people with Zcash. So it's a valiant effort, of course, and I encourage, I fully support anyone being able to fork or clone a project. That's a part of the open source nature of it. That's a part of the free market. I'm all for that. So all the power to them and their coin. To me, I'm not going to take action on this unless it actually turns into a thing, develops more market liquidity, gets listed on bigger exchanges, and suddenly increases in value. And suddenly it's like, okay, now it's worth taking a few hours out of my day to redeem these so that I can, sell them and make a bit of money off of it. That's just where I stand with it. That said, there's 4.5% staring you right in the face right now if you were to go through this process, depending on market liquidity. So free money's free money, I guess. Nothing to shake a stick at. So sounds like a noble cause to me. Look at YT. Do you mean YTC? I see WT, not YT, sorry, WT. All right, I'll just leave that for now. During the last year, everybody was waiting for Bakkt to launch a super bullish event. Now that it's going forward, is it really? Seems like everybody forgot about it. What do you think? Yeah. Good observation. A lot of people have kind of some people's minds, but not as much. The hype is died down a bit because it is being delayed. But just because market sentiment isn't hyper focused on it doesn't necessarily mean that it's not going to be extremely bullish for crypto. On a fundamental note, having Bitcoin settled futures, I think, is fairly bullish. It's very bullish just based on the supply and demand dynamic. My personal opinion is I absolutely hate and despise cash settled Bitcoin futures, like what CME launched. I'm glad CME launched that market. It's great. But I think it's complete shit for the supply and demand ratio. You're basically creating fake supply that doesn't really impact and absorbing some of the demand, some of the speculative demand on the market by creating this fake supply that doesn't even affect the underlying price of Bitcoin, right? Cash settled. I mean, you can create a supply of 10 trillion coins through that method. And if you absorb a big chunk of market share, then that's less buying or selling pressure on the real markets and real supply. So Bitcoin settled futures is suddenly anchored to real genuine supply, right? So Greg's saying that's okay, we'll just tokenize the stock market. Seems like that's the direction we're headed. I think that's an inevitability. So I'm glad. I think that's going to be bullish for Bitcoin in general, just to give larger players access to being able to buy tangible Bitcoins, real Bitcoins, versus just this cash settled Fugazi crypto. All right. And, you know, in some ways, it's almost obviously like everyone was all hyped over it, and we're in a bear trend and the price broke lower. So all that hype couldn't save the price. And then suddenly market sentiment was in the gutter and people stopped thinking or talking about it. And then we went on a wild bull trend. And Bitcoin gained more aggressively than a lot of people anticipated. So market sentiment isn't always wise or accurate. Things can happen outside of market sentiment. In fact, the most bullish scenario is for it to launch, be incredibly bullish, and throw everybody for a surprise and leave a lot of people sitting on the sidelines. That's just cash that could be entered in at a large, higher stage. So I personally think that would be a very bullish type scenario. So we'll see, but I'm all for it. I still think it's bullish, even if market sentiment's not paying attention to it. People also have very short attention spans as well. You know, they tend to chase the latest hype, the latest drama, the latest news, whatever. What's the hype of the week? You know, it's always changing from week to week. So it seems like more people are focusing around the Warren Buffett dinner, the Tron dinner, where they're going to feed Warren Buffett, you know, piles of shitcoins in a soup. It seems that that's more important and relevant to people than other stuff. That's the biggest hype lately, which is fine. Certainly interesting enough if someone spent several $1 million on a dinner with someone who's about to kick the bucket. He's probably not even going to buy crypto or get into crypto regardless. So a bit fishy, end up not showing. Yeah, there's all kinds of rumors around that. But it's speculative right now. All right. Rock, yes, he seems to be an interesting price area. Can have a look. I can't pull up the chart. If you could put that chart in the chat, I'll be able to copy the link. Otherwise, I can't really copy it from the Q&A section. But let's just take a look at Siacoin. Ooh, it does look like an interesting price area, to be honest. This is another low Satoshi coin. Certainly can be worth a punt. Can be worth a stab. BTC charts kind of a bit of a double bottom. If we were to make a reversal, then certainly could be an area for it. If it breaks down and goes to the next area, then even though it doesn't seem like much, there's still downside risk. It could still, man, this is really the sick twisted thing about it is if support broke, it could still technically dump an extra 80% on the BTC charts. But that's if support breaks. So far, it's kind of going sideways. Breaks out of this smaller range here. Could end up making a move. I noticed the volume kind of dried up a lot on stuff like Coin. It's very pale in comparison to where it used to be. So large market cap, really crap volume. It's got good supply distribution, but really crap garbage volume for its supply distribution. It's even on Binance. It's only pushing 100K on Binance. All right, 1 million in total. So, is it experiencing the slow kiss of death, or is it going to have a comeback? Looks like a coin that's going through the slow kiss of death. I think the project's still active. You ever want to quickly see if the project's still active? Just go in the last areas on Bitcoin Talk. See what people are saying about it. Usually if a project's dead, they're like, the website doesn't work. The developers haven't shown up on the Slack for past 5 months, so on and so forth. Apparently they recruited and they raised $3.5 million. Anyways, and you could just kind of read through people's comments as a quick way to see where it's at. Obviously, the SIA community members are probably a lot more on top of what's going on than just the random traders coming in looking at low Satoshi tickers. But this is a very quick way to, get a bit of a pulse, bit of a sense as to what's happening. Just censor a lot of the stupid comments out. There are usually plenty of those. And of course, if one were to take a punt at this, then it's like, okay, well, guess what? 13% to the previous low. So if I were to buy some of this, I probably would set a stop. That's a reasonable stop. So let's say a 15% stop. Hey, if it cracks the slow, I'm out. Risk 15%. Right? So that's one way to do it. I wouldn't bag hold it if this support broke. If this immediate support snapped, I wouldn't bag hold it. Because if it ever ended up a really low Satoshi coin, especially since the volume is low, like I said, this could still technically drop close to 90% on the BTC charts. But if this were the bottom and you had your 15% stop in place to cut out if it wants to bleed out more, and if this were the bottom, then suddenly your risk to reward's pretty good. Especially considering like when it's ramped up in the past, it's quite drastic. So if I were to measure risk to reward on something like this, it'd be fairly simple. Let's just say it was 15%. Let's say first target was resistance here. Suddenly you've got a really ridiculous risk to reward. Kind of hard to see this. Can't even see the ratio. That's how ridiculous it is. 1 sec. Let's just clean this up here. That would be like a 22-to-1 risk reward if it did something stupid like that. Here's 15% to make 300%. As an altcoin for you. That's how I would treat that. This would not be something I'd want to bag hold if it broke support, but you know, I like knife catching. I don't mind taking a stab at things at support before they make a move, because sometimes when they make a move, it's too bloody late. Sometimes when they make a move, the price is already up in the clouds. Will spike and boom, right? So that's how I would treat that if I wanted in on some CI. I'm not a big fan of the volume, but volume can pick up as things get bullish. If we did get a little bit of an alt season or push, then obviously SIA coin would probably be on that. Probably be up for a good rally, just like anything else. So it's an old school project. It's been around for quite some time, since 2015. And we could see things, you know, times where it was dead before in the slower range. Actually, it's so much higher. Satoshi-wise, we've seen it dead before on really low volume. I mean, look at the volume prior to 2017, 50,000, 100,000. Volume across the board, though, is low in crypto. Hell, even in the early days, 21,000, 14,000, that's nothing. Then when volume kicks in, when it goes bullish, suddenly it's like 14 million, 34 million. Parabola, 100 million in volume. So volume will certainly follow a bull market. It would pick up on a bull market. So I'm not the biggest fan of the volume, but it could be. That's how I would do that. I'd cut it if it dropped 15% on the BTC charts. Pretty simple. All right, WTC. WTC. Volume increase on Binance. What's going on with this? This is Walton Chain. Walton Chain. You know, when I think of the term Walton, I think of somebody wearing a tweed sweater. Anyways, 9 million volume. I remember when, anybody remember all the Walton Chain hype back in the day? Right, this is like, we might as well just call it Mr. Rogers Chain. Anyways, enough trolling. Is Walton Chain related to the Waltons of Walmart? Or dirty overalls? I have no idea. I have no idea. Probably not. These crypto nerds sure know how to name projects, though. All right, so some guy, Mr. Walton, that invented RFID. Okay, that makes sense. The TV show The Waltons. Interesting. Increase in volume. For whatever reason, could be something there. Somebody knows something that we don't? Or is there some kind of hype? Some kind of announcement? Walton Chain. Launched a limited pre-sale of Karen Miner. Batch 2, okay. Miners. Blah, 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 blah. TA wise, it looks like it's at an interesting area. This chart's ugly. Please check out this link. Is this Walton chain scamish? It probably is. Half of these coins are scams. Scamish. Team token airdrop and burn plans. Commit to technology research. Blah, 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 blah. Trigger conditions. Airdrop, burn amount. When was this written? July 12th. They have it an airdrop. Shall be airdropped to ERC20 addresses before the mainnet token swap. Okay, so they don't even have a mainnet yet? Okay, that could be. So that could have something to do with the increase in volume that we've been seeing, be related to an airdrop. Significance of a burn plan. Technically, a burn plan can add bullish pressure into the market by reducing supply. It's like supply and demand dynamic. If suddenly coins get burned, that's removing supply off of the market, similar to BNB. Be similar to like a buyback plan for stocks. Is this a pump and dump? Yeah, it certainly could be pump and dump-ish. But it'd be similar to like a buyback plan for stocks, where a company decides to buy back its own stocks to reduce supply, which is usually favorable for investors, so on and so forth. Let's see where the volumes start to increase here. Seemed like the volume started to increase before the announcement. Surprise, surprise. Double bottom. Technical perspective is certainly at the lower end of the spectrum if one were buying low and selling high. It's be worth looking at, I guess. $81 million market cap. Supply economics. Well, there was about 30 million of the supply that I guess one would look at the announcement, and that would probably tell you how much is supply. It's a possibility that there's 30% of the supply that they're holding. How's the money used? You look at supply, current circulation, but including some locking amount, precisely no more than 20 million. 25 million WTC. Well, that supply has certainly increased, so what's up with that? That's the current circulating supply at the time in 2017. So we know that supply has increased. It would probably require reading through the white paper to get all those details. 30%, they kept 30%. That's pretty greedy. It's pretty high, but anyways, I would say it would probably be worth looking at the supply token, supply dynamics in the white paper to see all that. That'll probably take some time, probably not necessarily something I could read through during an update. Anyways, those are all the questions that I would ask myself when looking at stuff. I haven't thought about Walton Chain in quite some time, though, since it was pumping in 2017. From a technical perspective, it's low, slow on the chart. So ADA, Cardano. You just got to do a little bit more scientific research before you launch the network. It's a little bit more research. It's a little bit more research. It'll launch next week, in 10 years. Again, it's kind of at a lowish point. Prior resistance, that might be support right now. We'll see. There's no confirmation of anything, of course. But, you know, perhaps early confirmation. Hey, can we snap above this immediate descending line? How far does that go? All right, it's kind of been a bit of a slow bleed on the BTC charts. I'm glad I cut out of this early, almost like immediately after I got into it. I came back and I looked at the chart and like, there's not really an edge there. I should just cut out of that. Sometimes you'll do that. You might be in a trade and then you look at it. Could even be a few minutes later with a different set of eyes. You're like, no, I don't want to buy that. So I think it kind of dropped a bit more since then. I bought it somewhere up here. Mid-range. Wasn't really an edge there. Before the network launches, if it does launch, we could see a pump leading up to it. A little bit of hype and FOMO. So that's something. If it was launched in staking or whatever, I'd probably have a big bag of Cardano over Tezos. But obviously, I chose the one that actually has a live network that's already building things and growing things on top of it, even though it's a lower market cap and lower volume right now. So project interests me, but it's kind of in the wait and see category. I don't have any compelling reason yet. And how did it do this year as far as performance? I mean, it's all right. It did better than Ripple. Ripple gets the price for severely underperforming every single crypto market, except for short of anything that was a low cap that got delisted. Just to give you an example, I went up 276%. If you look at Ripple, rest in peace, this year, ooh, a whopping 78%. I mean, even absolute garbage went up higher than that. Everything went up higher than that, I think. I can't even think of anything that didn't even... Let me just pick some random stuff. What did XMR do? Yep, more than 70%. What about Doge? What did you do, Doge? Did you go up higher than 70% from the lows? Even Doge, the silly joke coin, went up higher than that. Double. What about Satoshi having visions? Even that. Russia. See you later. Even Sia outperformed it by 20%. Jeez. Not a good time to have been super heavy into that this year anyways. But Why is that? Well, let's look at the fundamentals. What's the circulating? We want to talk about supply dynamics. Circulating supply is 42 billion. Guess who owns the other half of that equation, right? 58 billion. XRP. One company owns over 50% of the supply. I would call this the longest ICO in history. This even puts EOS to shame with their year-long ICO. They're still selling supply. They're still selling tokens. Oh, but it's not an ICO. It's not a this. It's not a that. Well, you know, it totally, it's the exact same thing. They're still selling supply. I think they're selling like 1 billion a month or something like that. Anyway, so again, that's just increase of inflation, right? Huge. And it's all centralized in the hands of one company, all that supply. So as far as like the whole tokenomics supply dynamic, supply and demand dynamic, supply has, it's shown us, the market has shown us that this year supply has outpaced demand, right? There's not enough demand to absorb that massive supply that's being sold on the OTC markets. Be interesting to look at the exact dynamics, but I've read articles on exactly how much they're selling each year and so on and so forth. It would be interesting to actually kind of do an analysis of how this has increased. Where is that supply being absorbed into, right? Anyways, it's underperformed. Went off on a tangent there. VET, could look at VET. VET. Did VET perform better than Ripple? It did. No offense if anybody's invested in Ripple. Or if anyone's hardcore about Ripple. It's just my perception, my opinion on it. Well, we got a very clear line in this end, the BTC charts. So I personally wouldn't buy any unless it broke this line. To break this line is only, unlike the other market that was a 40% rise, this only has to pop up about 15% in order to start breaking it. So the USD chart just looks ugly and choppy. One, I guess, could say it had a throwback to retest prior resistance range, turn support in a small sitting triangle, ramped up. Right when it looks like it's going to break out, it flops and traps and basically just dumps 56% because things are volatile in altcoins, crypto markets. So I would say let it break on the BTC charts before catching falling knives. Let's see what the volume's like on that. VeChain. Volume's all right. Pretty decent volume. OceanX. What the heck is that? Anybody ever hear this exchange? Seems like there's just new exchanges just creeping up every. OceanX. Ooh. Dogecoin and Tezos will be listed on OceanX soon. Oh, what a great exchange. Lovely exchange. Love this exchange. Best exchange ever. No, just joking. Suddenly they just confirmed my bias for me. Huh? Anyways, All right, that'll be another exchange that Tezos will be listed on. July 24th and 26th, which is trading starts tomorrow. Same sentence. That's interesting. Okay, let me just look at this now. As far as volume, what is your volume? OceanX, let's see, rankings, exchanges. What is the ticker on OceanX? OCEX? What does this rank? Right there, 64. Okay, so this is apparently the adjusted volume of 31 million, 24 hours. So I guess they adjusted it to try to take out wash trading. If there's any wash trading happening, let's see what the non-adjusted reported volume. See if there's a difference here. Where are you at, OceanX? Okay. Seems about the same. So might not be a ton of wash trading or whatnot happening there. Could be real volume numbers. And why was I looking at? Because we were looking at VeChain or whatever. That. All right, so that'll be another exchange that Tezos will be listed on. That's great. The more the merrier. Already kind of been seeing it grow. All right. So I have no idea how old that exchange is, where it came from, what it's all about. But if they're, I don't know, listing Doge and Tezos, it's kind of ironic, huh? Let's just look at the announcements. See, you can kind of maybe even get a gauge based on when was their first article, right? Seven months ago. So I think it's like probably relatively niche exchange. Anyways, you get the point. One could do some more fundamentals and stuff, research into that. Hot. Full retrace coin, huh? It's kind of not really doing a heck of a lot. I don't even think haven't even launched their live network yet. So this is still an ERC20 token as far as I know, which is one of the reasons why it was, I did take some profit on it higher up, like, more around here. I took some profit on it because it's still in the ERC20. They haven't even launched it yet. Anyways, this would be worth checking out to see when they're actually going to launch the network. If Obviously, no guarantees that's ever going to happen. I've made some profit off of this one, so I locked in hard profit too. So this market could technically go to zero, and I still will have made money off of it. But obviously, it'd be better if it did something interesting and ramped up. Volume's kind of being on the decline. So it's worth diving in again, some fundamentals in relation to that, to see when the launch is, if they're actually going to launch. I know there were those nodes that you could run. Let's see. All right. So in relation to that, it looks like it's done a full retrace almost on the USD charts. It's done a substantial retrace on the BTC charts. What I have left, I bought out like 5 Satoshi, so still technically up. So I could still be patient. I've already pulled out hard profit, so I've already won off of this. But so I'm going to be patient till it launches something. Do some more research, probably dig in a little bit to see if there's going to be a launch of the network. So might not be a bad area to scoop some up at right here. Obviously, if it did a retest, damn, that suddenly starts to look like a Dogecoin gains if it did a retest. The declining volume is a little bit concerning, though. You know, see, just kind of like fizzling. So it's like there's 27 million, 55, 45, 41, 60 million. Now it's only like a few million, 3 million, 3.3. So interest is probably waning until they do something interesting. Okay, BlockFi, wealth management, earn interest, borrow USD, grow wealth, do more with your crypto loans, BlockFi. I can't, it's an interesting idea. So the question is, what are my thoughts on BlockFi? You can earn up to 6.2% annually lending out your crypto or some USD. That would be equivalent to keeping money in an exchange. So you suddenly got to measure out the risk reward, because I'll tell you another place where you could probably earn more than 6.2% lending out your money a year. You could probably earn up to 15 to 18%, depending on what you're lending out, would be lending on Bitfinex, or even lending coins on Poloniex. But Bitfinex is a lot more liquid as far as their margin trading is concerned. You could lend stuff out there and probably earn more than 6 point something percent. Bitfinex has been around a lot longer, although they are probably going through some hurdles and challenges as far as regulations are concerned. You know, the New York, with New York right now investigating them and so on and so forth. But so really, as far as BlockFi is concerned, I think it would require a much deeper dive. And I would treat it and manage risk the exact same way I would treat an exchange, unless they came out and they had some kind of insurance underwriting them, which I haven't looked into it to see that. But if they're fully insured deposits, okay, then maybe that mitigates some of the risk, some of the counterparty risk. If they're not fully insured, then that's risky. I'm going to look into this a little bit more. The first and only interest earning crypto account to offer compound interest. Well, it's not the first and only because, like I said, you can do margin lending with compound interest, so on and so forth. Certainly an interesting idea. I'd like to know more about the company, how they're regulated, where they're incorporated, if there's any insurance underwriting it, what happens if they get hacked. They're based in New Jersey, so obviously they're probably heavily regulated if they're in the States. So I'm going to look into that. Personally, myself, though, unless it's insured, I would not be treating that any differently than keeping my money on an exchange. It's not the same as just keeping it in your bank, per se. And even then, not always fully guaranteed money in your bank if there's some kind of economic collapse. Most banks are only FDIC insured up to 150K. So. Certainly interesting, though. Rocky, do you know if Promether will be actively planning an ICO? So Promether right now, as far as that project's concerned, they're still coding. They're still developing. They're working on launching Contact, which is a secure encrypted messaging app. Before they even raise any more money or do anything, they want to launch an actual product to kind of set them a bit apart from other things. But I don't think they're going to ICO. I think it might stay within private equity just because of the risks around ICOs. I would kind of hope that it doesn't ICO because the landscape, the environment around ICOs has changed since 2017. So there's a lot more risk around ICOing, whereas like private equity, that can be done with a lot less risk. So I personally would like to see it not ICO. Also, market sentiment-wise, ICOs have left a bad taste in a lot of investors' mouths. So, but I know that IEO could always be a possibility. I mean, that could certainly be an interesting approach. And we know that if you end up IEOing on Binance or whatever, then it's like instant liquidity and probably sell out in a very short period of time. So that could certainly be one interesting possibility or interesting path. But IEOs are in a regulatory gray zone right now. They're not necessarily clearing out of the water. They could end up being on the regulatory chopping block in the future. Kind of like how ICOs got away with a heck of a lot until regulators started to clamp down on them. So right now it's kind of seems like it's undetermined as to what its next path will be as far as funding. Right now they're just focusing on building a product from there. So that is that. That pretty much answers all of the questions. Oh, here's another question. What are my thoughts on Libra? That's certainly an interesting one. I know that Facebook has been getting the screws taken to it by Congress, and for good reason. A huge breach of privacy, breach of trust for the users. Basically, if you're on Facebook, you are the product. You are being sold to the product. You wonder why it's free? It's free because you're the product. And big corporations and advertisers and stuff are their clients, right? Are the customers. So I noticed there's a big controversy around this Face app. You probably saw this. Oh, make someone age, swap faces or whatever. Well, if you read the terms and conditions, it turns out that they will own your images indefinitely. And apparently there's a lot of sketchiness around that. Facebook doing what Facebook does. I don't trust Libra as far as I can spit. I'm not on Facebook. Never used Facebook, never will. So those are all the downsides. So it's kind of interesting when you looked at how Congress was grilling them. was interesting because they were able to make the distinction that Facebook is centralized and not decentralized, and it doesn't share the same values and merit as Bitcoin. In fact, to me, it almost seems like Facebook is being a parasite and just piggybacking off of the crypto scene. That's all the negative element. That's all the dark side of it. Everything's double-edged sword. On the plus side, the positives of Facebook is the fact that, you know, when you have the largest corporation, one of the largest corporations in the world, signaling that they're interested in crypto and blockchain, it shows that we're that much closer to mainstream wide user adoption. The Libra project can certainly be interesting if it interfaces well or if there's a lot of synergy with Bitcoin. If suddenly you can, if it's tradable with Bitcoin and it works well and there's nice synergy with decentralized crypto, then that's interesting. That can certainly be bullish because Facebook has over 1 billion users. So we know we could tap into a wider user base. On a positive, it certainly gives legitimacy to crypto. Not the fact that Facebook is legitimate, but to the average mainstream consumer, they see Facebook's into crypto, suddenly crypto's legit because they're all using Facebook, right? Market sentiment wise, it's hot air, but it's market sentiment wise. Crypto's been legit since the start. But it's hot air, right? It's what people accept based on network effect and corporations that they feel comfortable with, type of thing. So those are some of the pros in relation to that. I personally think that the regulatory element and aspect of that, there's pros and cons. I believe in a free market, so I think a corporation should be able to create their own crypto without having a ton of regulators breathing down their neck, telling them what they can and cannot do. That said, those regulators, in theory, those regulators are there to protect the average user, the end consumer. If there's massive breach in trust and users are being exploited by a big evil corporation, then obviously we want some level of regulatory oversight and some kind of penalties. I think Facebook actually just paid a multi-billion-dollar penalty. Unfortunately, that just goes to Treasury, and that may or may not be used for, may be put to good use, may or may not be put to good use. I personally think a better system is if you have a big nasty corporation like Equifax. I also heard they got a big fine too because of breach in privacy. I personally think, and that affected many American users, I personally think if someone's going to get slapped with a fat fine, instead of putting it in Treasury coffee, maybe you issue out a dividend payment to all your citizens. Break that up, send all the affected user a check in the mail, and let them spend it. So we know how much money's wasted in government. There's a lot of waste. Anyways, I'm digressing. These are just my personal opinions, right? Subject to change, depending on the situation. So don't take it as my opinions are just that. They're my opinions. You might agree with them. You might disagree with them. I might be full of it. Maybe my opinions are just hot air. This is just my perception. That's my perception of it as of right now. Subject to change. Thought about it, kind of weighed out the pros and cons. Overall, I'm for it, even though I don't like Facebook personally as a company. I do think it's good for the crypto space and certainly interesting that they are interested in crypto and that large corporations and stuff are interested in that sort of thing. I do like it predominantly because anything that affects and can encourage new users to come into crypto will affect the supply and demand dynamics of the markets and of crypto, and therefore probably be fairly good for my bag. So I have my own personal self-interest. It's related to that, as would anybody who's invested in crypto would like to see anything that's positive or bullish, as long as it doesn't compromise the core values of crypto: decentralization, freedom, stuff like that, right? So there's a balance. All right, we're going up on 2 hours. One last request, bats. We're going to look at bat, and then we're going to wrap it up. 2 hours. So I said last week we'd do a nice longer update, a nice 2-hour update, and indeed that is what we are doing. All right, bat, what are you doing? What is bat doing? Just a market that has more data. There's the most data on this. Bitfinex. It's not really trading with a ton of conviction. It's just kind of being a slow bleed. You kind of see a sharp V-top up here, sold off. Nice little dead cat, slow bleed, almost into full retrace. BTC chart. It's done a full retrace on the BTC chart, so it's all the way down here at support. There's certainly an area to pay attention to. Starting to see this in a lot of altcoins. A lot of altcoins have done full retraces just this year, right? This broke out of, this is interesting, it broke out of the all-time high. It was mooning to the moon, and it did a full retrace. In fact, look at that, a 77% drop just over the course of the past few months. That's why you got to set stops if you're going to catch a breakout. Right? Could have been trapped up here, bled out. And then dollar-wise, it dropped a bunch too. It can certainly be interesting to take a punt at, since it is at support on the BTC charts. If you were to look at this like a range, there does seem to be a very clearly established range here since its inception. So, you know, similar to Doge play, might not be a bad idea to take a little punt at it. A smaller size. It's the volume on that. But obviously with the goal of cutting out if support were to break, right? Like if this low were to snap, then probably not worth bag holding because it'll probably make new lows. And you know, that's not too far. You could basically say, okay, I'll cut out if it drops 10% on the BTC charts. Then suddenly you have a clear line in sun where to cut out, where it says stop, right? If that support were to break, this is not the type of action where I just average down, because if this support snaps, then it's just open air, right? New price discovery into new lows. Right. That said, if support holds up, then buying at that historical support where it tends to rally off support, not a terrible trade setup, in my opinion, if you're into knife catching and dip buying. But I wouldn't bag hold it. 10% stop, it's reasonable. It's quite a reasonable stop. Probably worth a punt. So that's my thoughts on that. All right, I said one more, another request for rep. So I'm gonna look at rep. It's Encore, but this is it. This is the absolute last one. There's a giant cane that's gonna pull me off the mic if I go any longer. Rep. What are you doing, Rap? You know, Rap, Augur. Let's see what this is doing. Declining volume. Necessarily per se. Markets. Ooh, it's on Vindax. Coinbean. Binance. Kind of feels on the BTC chart. Let me see if there's. It's an open air right now. I wouldn't necessarily call these wicks support. I personally don't feel like I'd want to take a knife stab at this because it's kind of an open air price discovery to the downside on a slow bleed. It's not to say that can't find a just rally from here, but it is to say that it did snap below prior support zones and is in a bit of open air and a slow bleed. So I need to see some green here before taking a stab. So this would be like the opposite, where the other coin was at support, and if it broke support 10% lower, then it's an open air. On the BTC chart, that one is already an open air. USD chart, it's just kind of chopping around. So if it could bounce and make a higher low with some conviction, then maybe it'll do something. If not, probably best to just kind of wait it out and see. It's a token linked to a DApp, ERC20 token. It's a prediction market. I don't know. Its price action is really not trading with a ton of conviction. It seems like a bit of declining volume. So not everything will survive, right? Eventually, we're going to see a lot of projects, just more projects, just fade away. Not saying that this one will, but I don't see a lot of conviction in that project right now as far as the price action. Now, that could certainly, in an alt season, that can certainly shift very quickly, but we're starting to see some things pop off. All right, folks, that's it. That's 2 hours. That's it for this week. Let's see if we continue to see a little bit of green on altcoins. So far, it seems like the brakes have been tapped a little bit on this heavy bleeding. A lot of them have done full retraces on the BTC charts or even made new lows on the BTC charts. Now we're starting to see them breaking correlation a little bit. So we'll see if they can build up their own momentum and start to have some nice epic bounces. Epic bounces on the BTC charts can lead to retests of highs or breakouts on the USD charts. So let's see if we get any pay dirt on some alts coming up now that Bitcoin's consolidating and giving them space to breathe. So we'll end it on that note. I hope everyone has a great weekend, and we shall see you all in the trenches if anything changes. Take care, folks. Cheers.